You see, there is this tendency in human beings to seek escapes. Now, escapes can come in different forms. It can come as addictions, indulgences. It can come in the form of diverting the mind from the immediate discomfort. So, we either switch on the television or we scroll through our social media feeds, or a puff of cigarette or a glass of wine, whatever it may be. We are always looking for escapes because the immediate discomfort, the irritation, or the boredom which is felt has so much intensity. Those sensations become so uncomfortable that we think that we need to get away from those sensations. And all the methods and practices and prescriptions that people have come up are based on escapism. Even meditation can become an escape if not understood, in principle. Even meditation can become an escape. But if we are totally present with the sensation, with the feeling, and we get into the heart of it, what we realize is that there is actually no one that is experiencing the sensation. In other words, there is only the sensations, only the experiencing, but there is no experiencer. There is only the content, the fact, but there is no knower of the fact. So I am the fact. I am the content. I am my feelings. I am my sensations. But you see, when the intensity of these feelings, thoughts, and sensations is high, there is this tendency to intellectualize, to rationalize. So, intellectuals try to come up with theories, with philosophies, to justify, to explain what is happening. But every explanation, whether it is intellectual, or it is mystical, or it is spiritual, is actually a cover up on the reality. It is a cover up on the inevitable nature of this aware presence, which is simply here and now. And what happens is that the more we remain present with these sensations, the more we get to know their illusory nature. The more we get to know that there is no one who is actually experiencing all of these, but things are simply happening. And that itself, it brings about a shift in perception. And that shift in perception is the awakening, the insight, or the understanding. And that understanding permeates into our daily living. And you see, that is what transforms our relationship with the other. Because we feel that we are separate from the society, from the collective, but we are the collective. And what defines the collective, my relationship with the collective, is the kind of relationship I have with myself. So if I'm always looking for escapes, if I am always looking for shortcuts, for remedies for my immediate discontent, then the collective also behaves in the similar functions. Then we create a society which operates like that. So the whole organism behaves in this manner. While we may say that we are democratic, that we are free thinkers, that we are liberals, that we believe in certain ideologies, that we are progressives, whatever labels we put on ourselves. But there is always a contradiction between our thinking and our action. And that indicates that we are not integrated, that our thinking is limited. We are simply identifying with ideas, with concepts, with beliefs. But we have not gone into the depth. We have not dealt with our own nature, with the image that we have created. So I feel that I am this person who is a bundle of feelings, sensations, contracted into this localized energy that is extremely reactive. And this ownership of this reactive entity brings about suffering. But when I know that I am simply the instrument of execution, then my actions in daily living becomes spontaneous, and spontaneous actions bring peace of mind. That means I act according to the situation, according to the conditioning, and I accept the bare actuality of what is. I don't try to change things based on my beliefs. I don't try to enforce a change on myself, thinking that I will be better if I am this or if I am that. I accept that my relationships are troubling. I accept myself the way I am. But the moment I start fighting with myself, the moment I create an image, a future projection of my idealistic self, it is then that I create a separation, a conflict between what I am right now and what I should be in the future. And that separation breeds conflict, confusion, irritation, and violence. If the nature of this separation is understood, that itself breaks down the images. And when the images dissolve, what remains is peace. When I say images, what I'm referring to is my identification with everything. My relationships are my identifications. When I see someone that I fancy, I don't actually see them. What I see is an image that I have superimposed on them, where I perceive them to be a certain way, to be loving, to be kind, to be generous, to be compassionate. But when that person acts otherwise, then I'm troubled. Then I start disliking that person. And that's what creates rift in my relationship with the other. So when we say that the society is dysfunctional, what we need to recognize is that dysfunction comes from our own personal dysfunction. The dysfunction is within us. It is not out there per se. The problem is we think that we are perfect, that we carry this image within us. And with that image, we assert ourselves. Go to any social media and you see the level of self-centeredness we exhibit, where we have opinions on everything. These days, there are spiritual gurus who give opinions on everything. But we don't see how this thing is creating conflict in our lives. The need to assert yourself and prove yourself right and the other person wrong. It comes from, it is violence. It comes from not accepting yourself. The doubt is within you. That is why you feel the need to assert your view, to make the other person change, to teach them a lesson. That is how the ego mind works. It does not seize its own blind spots. It does not seize its own dysfunction. What it fancies is that it wants to change other. It wants other to conform to its own ideas. And trying to change the other is violence. When you try to change someone, you are actually committing violence on them. I want you to wear the clothes that I like. I want you to speak in a certain way. I want you to buy things that I like. So I've, put up so many conditions. I want you to follow a spiritual practice. I want you to follow a philosophy that I like, I love. Only then I get along with you. Otherwise, I'm not interested in any relationship with you. That is how it breeds confusion and conflict. Even if the other person, to make you happy, pretends to change, they cannot keep up that act. And then, of course, there's a clash of personalities. And you get hurt because you expected them to be a particular way. And you asserted yourself that my way is the correct way. And you should be how I want you to be. In other words, you say that I know you better than you know yourself. So you sort of interfere in God's work when you say that I know better. You become the pseudo subject and you usurp the subjectivity of the pure subject, the consciousness. The consciousness creates this whole play, this whole relationship, this whole action. It paints this whole reality. But when you say, I know better, what you are doing is you are committing a violence, an act of violence. You are strengthening that entitification within you, that sense of personal agency. You're strengthening it by saying that my ideas, my beliefs, my theories, my philosophies are correct and the other is wrong. But what happens when I'm open to everything? I still may not accept the other person's view, but that does not create any restlessness within me. That does not create any form of anxiety within me. So I can be a Hindu and you can be a Muslim or a Christian or a Sikh. But based on your views, I don't have a conflict with you. Because as I see myself playing a role of a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or a Sikh, I also see you playing the same role. And the beliefs that you hold are not your creations. It has come from conditioning. It has been handed over to you by the society. And similarly, the beliefs that I hold have been given to me by people around me, by my environment. Today, you may be proud of your identifications like your profession, your religion, your class, your caste, whatever. But think for a moment, if you were born in a different region altogether, say if you were born in an African country or in some other Western nation, you would have a different set of beliefs. You would have a different style of conditioning. The moment you start holding life too tightly, too seriously, you begin to experience suffering. Because then, what you're holding tight, you spend the rest of your life defending that. So, all your attachments in your relationship, just examine this. Where do they come from? Where is this attachment coming from? Who is being attached and to whom? Once you get to the depth of it, you will see it all as a play of the divine consciousness. There is no entity here who creates attachment out of personal will. The attachment also is a happening. And the strength and the sense of personal identification, when it is strengthened, the nature of attachment also gets transformed. Even the attachment gets tightened. And that creates conflict and pain in relationships. The other person who's in front of you is a mirror where you actually see yourself, not the other person. If you carefully examine this, every time you're always superimposing the contents of the past onto every object that you see. And that is the bane of our existence. So, to see something new, to see something with complete newness, it requires total attention. And this is what Jiddu Krishnamurti called freedom from the known. Because it is the known that binds us. I am this, I am that, my religion, my gender, my caste, my social status, my bank account, my profession, my expertise, my skills, my this, my that. These are all identifications that create a feeling of centeredness. And we live in constant suffering because all of our actions are self-centered actions. What we fail to see is that the other is not separate from ourselves. The other is not separate from me. The separation is only in appearances, but the life force, but the consciousness that animates this picture of me and other is the same. So I may see things from a different perspective, and even you may see things from a very different perspective. But then, with this understanding that it is the same consciousness which is doing this, there is no conflict. There is simply no conflict because everything is seen as a happening and not doing of an individual. Just sit with this. Sit with all your contents and let your mind flow. the way it wants to flow without resisting anything. When you accept everything as it is, a new possibility arises. And in that, there can be no conflict. That truly defines our relationship with ourselves and as well as with the world. Because in that relationship, there is no separation. So I understand that I am the collective, that I am not separate, that my dysfunction breeds into the dysfunction of the collective. It is the same. When I understand that, and a transformation takes place within my own psyche, it is then that the collective changes. Otherwise, there is no possibility till I continue habitually in my old ways, in the mindless ruminations, either in past, either in the dead past or in imaginary future. I keep acting and reacting according to my conditioning. Therefore, there is no possibility of a change. But if I pause and I look and I reflect on this and I investigate, and there is no philosophy or no deep thinking required for this. This is not an analytical process, because thought by nature is divisive. A thought is not free. So something which is not free cannot lead you to freedom. To experience freedom, allow yourself to see totally, to feel totally, to perceive totally, without judgment, without analysis, without discrimination of any kind. And then you see that you are not separate from the content, that you are the happiness, you are the sadness, you are the excitement, you are the anxiety, that everything that manifests, every observation that comes up is all there is, and there is no observer. And this insight itself brings freedom. Freedom from the known.